Not just people. Like, I don't think we should be out harming the earth or the creature. Like, I think we should come as close to no harm as possible and still be, like, functional.
Can I chime on that real quick? Just so I know, who was it on here that said they were a Christian? Was it the guy at the top or the one with the yellow icon?
Both of them.
That's me.
Oh, okay. What do you think about because you said hallelujah to the peace, right? What do you think about Matthew chapter 10 verse 34 on down?
Matthew 10. Oh, that would be.
Before you start, I can just ask ETT. Do you know the Galapagos?
Yeah, I know Galapagos. He's a good buddy of mine. You should let him on if he wants to hop on. He's cool. Same thing with Rudy as well. Hey, what's up, Galapagos?
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, well, I hear you loud and clear, man. But cool. This is a good one, Matthew 10, verse 34. And again, you can read it yourself, so I can't put my twist on it.
Are you saying fear man?
Go ahead.
Don't fear man, is it that verse? I can try to remember it. I'll look it up.
Yeah, Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 on down. Christ is saying, I come not to bring peace on earth, but I came to bring division. Really paraphrasing it. So after we read that, I'm interested in see what do you think about that? Because you guys were talking about, the peace on earth, right? Just a minute ago.
I'm not a Christian. I was saying that was my idea of the moral
he responded, yeah, I'm not talking about you, but he responded and said hallelujah, right? So I just wanted to see his 2 cents on it.
Oh yeah, I would say that's not talking about he's come to like bring war or something. It's not that. Well,
he's come to bring objective reaffirmation of objective law that people may not agree with, that people may war with, right?
Yeah, but he said in that verse that he came to bring division. He came to set a son against his father, the daughter.
Right, like those who follow Christ and his laws, even within the family, that will be divided.
Yeah, I think you got to take his words to not be really literal all the time, and it's probably gonna seem like a cop out. But like he said, like if you don't drink my blood and eat my flesh, then you're not a disciple of me too. I don't think it's unreasonable to think. And he also mentioned that he spoke in certain ways because to divide the crowd or whatever, because he had a purpose that you have to kind of discern. I'm not saying it's esoteric. It's not secret. The message isn't a big secret or anything. But I think he used that kind of language to make a point. So I would say he's bringing the truth, like the truth of God. Come hell or high water, the truth has to stand rather than like.
But there's a scripture that says that Christ spoke in parables, so the crowd wouldn't be able to understand what he was saying, right? That's why, like, I'll give an example. If you go to, I want to say Matthew the 13th chapter, where Christ is given the parable of, say, the wheat and the tares, right? He gave it a parable out in public, but then when he was behind closed doors with his apostles, he gave them the breakdown as to what it means, right? So the apostles got the breakdown, but the thousands of other people, or hundreds, whoever was there, who heard the parable, they wouldn't know the breakdown, right? So going back to what I brought up in the verse, he said, I didn't come to bring peace on earth. So that was what I was wanting to inquire. What do you think about that?
I think it's go ahead, Jay.
Well, what he's bringing, the truth that he's bringing is not going to bring peace on earth. That's going to be the effect of what happens from what he brings. It's going to divide families. That's what the truth does. You bring the truth into corruption, or you bring the truth into a world of lies, and it creates division and chaos. So that's what I think he was speaking of.
Okay, but
may I ask for context?
Hey, also, I got a question.
Like, is this referring to the prophecy of him being like an earthly king? Is he like, what's the context? What is he speaking to when he says that?
I can just say, is it true number world? You were saying the other guy. True number worlds. Does anyone know him? Know them?
I don't.
I don't know who that is.
No. All right. No.
That's a mean-looking turtle there. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, he's angry. ETT always makes the joke that he looks like this other guy that we know called IDL.
Is that an actual giant tortoise from the Galapagos?
Yeah, it is.
Those things are amazing, man.
Yeah, they're really cool. I always wanted to.
Yeah, I used to have a pet tortoise before. He died a little while ago, but I used to have one of those as a pet. So when I saw that, I could immediately realize, oh, that's one of those giant, tortoises.
Yeah, I could.
So the truth is belligerent in a world of lies, right?
Wait, the world of lies. Well, who's the one who
saying
says
the
the lies?
The truth is belligerent in a world of lies, right?
Right, but who lies though? Like does God send lies, or is Satan the one who lies?
People lie. They make the free will choice to lie, right?
But can God lie though?
No.
So okay, well, just so I understand, if you deceive somebody, does that mean you're lying to them?
Say again?
If somebody was to deceive somebody, you agree that means they lied to them, right?
As far as I know, you might want to bring forth.
I think this is where First Kings comes in.
Well, I was just asking. I didn't bring up any verse. I'm just saying, like, if you deceive somebody, does that mean you're lying to them?
If you want to make a distinction, I think that deceiving is lying. But if you're making a certain distinction that I might be overlooking, you could give an example.
Okay. What do you think about Job chapter 12, verse 16?
You're gonna have to read it to me.
Okay, it says with him is strength and wisdom. The deceived and the deceiver are his. Speaking of the Most High.
I'll have to read that one. What's the verse again?
Job chapter 12, verse 16.
I might need more context on that. I'm not.
Off the top of my head, it seems like you could say, I got to see how the grammar is, but it sounds like it could be saying that the deceiver, it's his deceit is of the deceiver, but I got to look it up.
So you were
What?
You started with talking about Christ coming back to divide families, and now you're going over.
Job 12. Sorry.
Is there any reason you're jumping around here? I'm a little confused.
It's when he sends out the 12.
Well, we're just going along with whatever comes up. I mean, it's definitely interesting perspective. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Did you close what you wanted to close on?
Yeah. Don't worry about Matthew 10:34. Just forget that. We'll go to the next one because we already handled that.
I have an interpretation I can give you. With him is strength and wisdom. The deceived and the deceiver are his. I think you could read that as saying the deceived are of the father, the devil, sort of thing. So it's also suggesting that God created everything, and that's another whole big question. Is like, is God responsible for everything that everybody does? In a certain sense, he is, right? He takes responsibility over the creation, but I would argue that it's complicated, and I understand it to mean like he made everything, so in that sense he's responsible. But then if you have other agents being created that have the freedom of their will, that adds another angle to the situation. So he allows them to make their own decisions, and he's responsible for creating them.
So
And for setting the original trap.
What do y'all think of, because Isaiah 45:7 is kind of similar in that aspect, which, like Christ being behind everything. You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Isaiah 45:7, it says, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Some translations say calamity, and that is like he's sovereign over what happens, like because he'll use the evil of men to like say judge his people, like with the Assyrians. So I would say he's wanting to take sovereign. So like some Calvinists are going to argue that like this proves that God makes evil things or whatever, but I think the Bible is fairly clear on.
Wait, so who makes evil then? Does Satan do that?
I would understand that to mean he creates everything, like I just explained before. And I'd say a better translation to make that clear is like the ones where people say calamity, but it is the same word as evil, but it's contextual. So I mean, it depends on how you understand what philosophy is undergirding your hermeneutic, or if you're a Calvinist or whatever or not. But,
Of course, he created evil.
Yeah,
if he created free will, if he created man, and he trapped him with the tree and let them be tempted and all that, and he created Satan, then of course he created evil.
But it also goes out of
agree with her there on that.
Right.
But the Bible also goes to make a point. So the question is, how are you going to make sense of both of these? In other texts, it talks about like the source of evil being. It suggests that this certain angel falls, and God goes out of his way to say how he did not create him to be evil, right? And he became Satan by loving his own beauty. That is, not loving others, but putting himself first instead of God. And
he accidentally created evil.
Well, so it's out of the philosophy.
Hold on. Can I chime on something you said there? Dealing with that, I want to make a statement, but just so I don't misrepresent you, I just have to clarify, right? So Satan, he's going around, basically doing wicked things against the Most High, right? Is that what he's doing right now? Just to clarify. And you'll see why.
Yes, I consider that.
It would seem to me God's plan depends entirely upon Satan going around doing these things. Why would it be against God?
But what do you think about Job chapter 2? We see an example where Satan goes to God and gets...
Actually, the original text doesn't name Satan. That's a modern Christian interpretation. The original text just says it's an angel.
No, it says that's Satan. It's a title.
Okay, well, actually, Satan went from a noun to a verb to a title.
Yeah. Satan is that word nakash is a verb and an adjective and a noun. And in Job, yeah, you're right. It's just a title. It's not necessarily an individual because it has a definite article. But I agree with you. But
Satan was even used as a verb. Like,
well, it means accuser.
No, it can also mean the adversary. Like, as in when it talks about the Israelites or the Philistines being the Satan of the Israelites, the adversary of the Israelites, or so and so was a Satan to so and so. Like, they were the adversary of that person. It can also mean that.
Yeah, no, you're right. In Job, it's a definite article, and then it's so.
But it's not like Lucifer, Satan, fallen angel.
Well, I can speak to that if you want, but I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying it isn't used as a title or as an adjective, let's say, or just no one in particular. It's just like the one who is accusing, right? But like in the New Testament, if you're a Christian and you take the whole Bible as being, having an intent, I think, the way it's Satan's spoken of, he's referred to as the father. Jesus refers to him as the father of the devil, who's a liar from the beginning. And then in Revelation, John says that old serpent who is Satan and the devil. And then if you read Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14, seems to be the same. I would say it's the spirit behind the kings of the world that are in opposition to God. But yet God is still sovereign over all of that. And so Job is a special circumstance, so I would understand that to be, it is indeed Satan, but it doesn't have to be.
On that, not to cut you off, I apologize, but on that you said, you brought up, what is that, Isaiah 14, right, about the Lucifer. But what do you think? I believe it's verse 4, right? It says that this is talking about the king of Babylon, right?
Yeah. Yep. No.
So
this
if it's talking about the king of Babylon, how is that talking about Satan?
So the common Christian interpretation and I think maybe not today as much in Judaism, but I think it was in the past. But like, and you see this with passages about Israel and how like it'll change to a personal pronoun, like, and then the New Testament uses that to say Israel was representing Jesus, which is kind of goes along with what I was telling Pixie earlier about how it's like the people representing God on earth who represents Jesus, and then the church ends up being called his people. But my point is just that, so there seems to be this interesting grammatical thing going on in the Old Testament, things that were considered messianic. They recognized that something weird was going on, right, in the grammar, like when it goes from calling Israel my son to like he, like a singular pronoun, but like that in Isaiah and the one you mentioned with the king of Babylon in Isaiah 14. It clearly is talking about a real king, perhaps, or just a man, right? And then the language shifts to like, you were in the garden of God, you walked amongst the stones of fire, you were there from the beginning, until iniquity was found in you. So like, the idea is that there's these principalities, and then the reason I feel justified is because you can pick it up if you read it carefully, that there's something more than just simply this man that's being spoken of in context. It's kind of like the way God speaks in prophecy, I would say. And that's why, and to back that up, I'm going to say Paul and the other New Testament writers understood it that way, and that's why Paul said things like, we do not battle against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers who are behind the empires of the world. And so is what he's saying there, that tends to suggest anyways that he's speaking, that he read it that way as well, right? So, and the word is archons, and we can see historically how the Gnostics understood that too. So there's plenty of evidence that everybody's read it that way, including the New Testament writers, that there's God's saying more than just, you can see it in all sorts of passages. It relates to this spiritual opposer of God that's having his influence in his ways with these kings and such.
But is Satan,
right, but at the end of it,
so I know, not to talk over Pixie, I'll give her the mic in a second, but just so I know, does Satan have like the power over the underworld, right, where hell is? Does he have like dominion over that realm?
No, I don't think so. I kind of have a different understanding about death and the intermediate state, so I won't get into that. But I would just say,
he could if Jesus took the keys from him.
I don't take that so literally. I just think it means Jesus when it says like he went and preached to the spirits, or when it says he has the gates of Hades. It's just saying he defeated death at the cross.
Right.
At the end of the day, though, my thing is at the end of the day, no matter how you slice that cake, God's plan is pretty dependent on the adversary being the adversary, right? And
yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think
like
so.
His plan would not work without the adversary being the adversary. It just wouldn't.
Well, see,
and given that nothing and no one is God's equal, none of his creations are his equal. Is he God's adversary or is he man's adversary?
I kind of want to add on to that a little bit.
Go for it.
So, Dixie, I know you don't subscribe to the Bible, but if you did, I guess, would you say that it's sort of like this hive mind type thing where God's at the top giving orders down, and he's giving orders to the devil, or whatever you would call that left side, and this right side, and he's giving them orders to do these things down here so that prophecy can be fulfilled?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say, I don't know. I would say, I really don't. Okay, see, the idea of the adversary predates Christianity, right? I mean, at its very earliest form, it probably resembled something like the Eastern yin-yang, the light and the dark. But at some point, I'm just wondering, right? Because here's the thing. God created everything. He created the angels. He created the earth. He created man. Everything is God's creation. God is all-powerful, which means God doesn't have it equal. So I'm asking, in your opinion, like, to me, that would mean that the adversary can't be God's adversary, right? Like, because God could just poof and he's gone. So to me, that would make him man's adversary rather than God's adversary. And while that wouldn't say God is handing orders, it may suggest that maybe God is at least complacent in letting him do his thing because his plan depends on it after all. I'm not really sure. I can't coincide how this thing is his adversary and not his equal, and still everything depends on him being the adversary.
Right,
no,
right.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you on that, because
real quick, Wildheart, our buddy Primal Wars in the chat, he's cool, man. We know him. He's safe to bring on here in case he's trying to come.
Right. I'll let him back in. I'm just waiting for Max to get here, and then I've got to go out again. So once I get back, I'll let him in.
All right, that's cool. That's cool. But what I was asking about Satan having control under, as they call it, the underworld, right? Because most churches or Christians you talk to, they'll tell you, when you die, you go to hell, and you're tortured by demons. Satan.
Total nonsense.
So you agree that's not true?
Yeah.
Where do people go when they die?
So I think that when the breath leaves the body, the spirit, quote unquote, I think that you're not alive anymore. I think you don't exist essentially, but yeah, in the sense that like you're conscious. So I think when death is real, like so when you die, you're not alive anymore, basically. Go figure, right?
What state are they in? Are they like sleeping?
Jesus called it sleep, and so Christians will say, well, that just is because when someone dies, their body looks asleep. I don't make that kind of distinction with like, oh, it's just talking about your body. I think Jesus called it sleep because he is preaching that there will be a resurrection, and so you're asleep because it's not really eternal death or dead forever. It's just like a sleep because I'll raise up my people on the last day or whatever. So, but everybody gets raised too, yeah.
Right. But what state do you think they're in? Do they just not exist, or are
well, I hesitate to say they don't exist because, in a sense, they do exist. However that works, I like to think of it as like there's a pattern that is you in some sense that God can resurrect, and I think the language about which seems to tie you to your body, like because Paul talks about like you're sown a seed, but then you're raised incorruptible. So there seems to be some kind of idea of it. Or in Job when he says, you hide me in the grave, while your indignation passes over, and then remember me after you make my sins, or you put all my sins in a bag and tie it shut. And then he says, but I know that my Redeemer lives, and I'll see him standing on the earth in the last day in my own flesh with my own eyes.
You're talking about. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about what is that? Job 19:25, I believe.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, and that ties into another thing. What do you think about reincarnation?
Some people accuse me of believing in reincarnation. I don't think it's reincarnation because I think it's tied to the body. It's just a redeemed body.
Yeah, not on that verse necessarily, but like, what do you think about the whole concept in itself that people, can die and then come back later, as somebody else with the same spirit?
I think that.
Welcome back, see ya, and I'm going to the shop again. So Pixie and Mac are in charge. I'll be right back.
Hey guys.
Hey Mac.
I did want to respond to Pixie, but I want to let somebody else talk. I just her question on Job and stuff because I think that's a really good question.
But do you think reincarnation's in the scriptures though?
I don't think that's reincarnation. I think that's resurrection.
Yeah, but I said earlier that I wasn't necessarily focusing on that verse, but I was just asking, like, what do you think is reincarnation in a whole? Do you think that it's anywhere in the Bible?
Oh, you mean like, no, I think I see where people get confused about it because it talks about like Elijah, right? Like, is this Elijah or stuff like that? I think that's in the Hebrew thinking and mindset, like, it's like a type, antitype. So it's like certain people at certain times were like a picture of like a greater thing that would occur. And so you can also say like, it's the forerunner to the Messiah is the Elijah. So John was.
What do you think about when Christ said, if you go to Matthew chapter 17 and verse 10, he said that John the Baptist was Elijah. What do you think?
Yeah, he was about Elijah, right? Like in one of the Old Testament passages, it suggests a similar type of thing where it uses a definite article. But I would say that's a title for like the ultimate antitype of it. So Elijah,
so he's like in the spirit of Elijah, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but not like not spirit in the sense like it's you, like just how we use it, right? We talk about ghosts as spirits, but we also talk about like the spirit of the age or smells like Teen Spirit sort of thing. It's like a spirit can mean just like Paul says, "I'm with you in spirit," and then he talks about your spirit being dead or alive in Christ. So
but
I think
it's spirit.
Yeah.
Okay, but Christ said that he was Elijah himself, though. It wasn't in the likeness. He said that he was.
Yeah, in the sense that Elijah's a type, and he's the fulfillment of the type. That's how I read it. That's just how I understand it.
Or is it like another title? Like if he was to say like, and he was Satan. Places in the Old Testament that would just read like he's the adversary or he's the enemy.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
but I would say that that's not necessarily a good point because the devil or Satan just can mean adversary, so that has two meanings. But with him saying that he is Elijah, because again, it was prophesied that Elijah would come again, right? So when Christ said that he was Elijah, we'd view it, me and Galapagos.
Yeah, but there's a problem with that.
He actually was.
Elijah shows up on the Mount of Transfiguration, and we know that's not John.
I understand, but I'd say that John the Baptist was already beheaded at that point.
Elijah means Jah is God, or basically God is God. That's what Elijah means. And some historians think that maybe that was like a nickname given to the figure in the Bible, that he was given that because he was wandering around saying, hey, you guys, you think these other gods are God, but I'm telling you, Jah is God.
Kind of like Dalai Lama?
I think it's both. I think it's definitely
like the Dalai Lama. There's always a Dalai Lama. Always.
Right, but that'd be reincarnation. But I don't think
No, I mean when one Dalai Lama dies, there's a new Dalai Lama. Like a pope, kind of, but it's the Dalai Lama.
Is it the same spirit though?
Yeah, they have to have
Is it kind of nuanced too?
I would say that they all share a lot of similar. Like they all have this childlike wonder and gentleness and joy and a very giving. Like they're like a Hindu, not Hindu. They're like a spiritual leader, kind of. The Dalai Lama.
So it's not an individual spirit of a person that moves from the dead guy to the new one, but in a sense, it's the same spirit in another sense, right?
Yeah, that's who you're going to go to. You're going to go to the Dalai Lama.
But regarding the thing that Max said, I think that's a good point. But I suspect that the text still is trying to get you to think about certain attributes of the actual original Elijah. But I also think it's not saying, it's literally that God's spirit going into that body or something.
Okay. All right, I'll accept that answer. I just got, which reincarnation is a good topic, so we should focus on this a couple minutes. But I just got another one for you, real quick. But
wait, real quick, because I just want to see that if I understand it correctly better. So you mean if a kid's skateboarding and doing awesome tricks, and somebody's like, "Oh, look, that's like Tony Hawk."
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Kinda. Yeah, because it's if that's his signature move, you could say he had the spirit of Tony Hawk or something. Especially if God ordained a purpose for that
That's really good.
role, for that role, and then you're fulfilling that role, and so it is Elijah, but not in the sense it's his essence. It's in a way it's his essence, but it's not his ghost didn't go into that guy sort of thing, you know.
Okay, and my apologies for interrupting. Did he leave?
He probably dropped. He'll probably come back.
No, ATT, he has a bad internet connection. He probably
Oh no, and I interrupted him, and now we gotta wait for a while to come back because I don't have admin yet.
So Pixie, before he comes back, I'll stop if he comes back in right away. But so the thing with the Job thing, I think it's a really interesting story because I think my view is that I actually think Satan did fall before, and then God may or may not have had I think he probably did have the plan all along, or whatever, however you want to look at that. But that God's redeeming or proving His ways are right through humans, and so He allows Satan to test Job as part of that plan. And so God could just overpower everybody, but He doesn't because of the whole free will idea thing.
Wait, can you guys hear me? Because
yeah, we hear.
Cut out
go ahead.
For a second. Okay, yeah. I just wanted to clarify on this. It's a two-part question, but I have to ask this so I understand your premise. I would say by talking to you, I don't think you're a what's the word? A preterist, right? You wouldn't consider yourself a preterist, right?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like a partial preterist, but I take the Daniel and Revelation.
Okay, but Christ, you don't think Christ returned already, right?
No.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted to clarify. What do you think about Revelation?
Daniel and Revelation.
Okay, but Christ, you don't think Christ returned already, right?
No.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted to clarify. What do you think about Revelation chapter 1 and verse 7? It says he comes with clouds and every eye shall see him. Here's the point. Even they who pierced him, right? So the men who pierced his side when he was on the cross, that said that they're going to see him when he returns. So I think you would agree that there's not people alive who are 2,000 years old, right? So what do you think about that verse?
So I believe my picture of the day of the Lord being 1,000-year period, the millennium, so to speak. So I think that's marked by the next returning of Christ, which is a rapture event. And then I think the way every eye will see him is not every eye that ever lived will see him at that time because there's people that are dead, right? My view about dead people is surely that they're not even alive. So I think every eye will see him at that time that's alive on the earth. And then when he comes back at the end of the 1,000 years with the people he took, his first coming. By the way, I think everybody that doesn't go with him on the first coming is dead or killed at that time. And then everyone that's not saved or whatever, however you want to say it. And then when they come back after the 1,000 years, this is Revelation 20 if you want to check where I'm getting this from. He comes back and then that's when all the dead people that are not saved are raised. And they see that coming because they're raised at that time. So
okay, so the rapture hasn't happened yet, right?
Right.
Okay, so just so I understand, so you're saying that so Christ is going to return and he's going to rapture his people and then they're going to go away for 1,000 years and then they're going to come again.
Right, and that's when the final judgment's commenced on those that are not that don't receive eternal life. In other words, and that's when Satan's released and he gathers the nations to attack the holy city or whatever in Revelation 20.
Oh, okay, so the rapture happens before the tribulation, right?
No, I would say the tribulation happens and then Christ interrupts it, and then everybody's dead on earth except for Satan. And that's the sense that he's.
But what do you think about? So what do you think about if you go to Matthew chapter 24, verse 29? It says immediately after the tribulation of those days will the Son of Man be revealed, and then under that it speaks about him sending his angels to gather his elect. So we see it says he's going to return after the tribulation, and then he's going to gather his elect. What would you think about that?
That's my view, right? That's my view that
but
Christ returns and kills the
Antichrist. Comes in the middle of the tribulation, right?
Well, no, the tribulation is going on, and then it's ended by him coming, and that's when he kills all the wicked people or whatever, and the Antichrist. That's I think 1 Thessalonians 4, I think. But it says he destroys the Antichrist with the bride, and if he didn't do that, then even the elect wouldn't be saved or something, right? He interrupts that. That's what I meant. And so, so he ends the tribulation by returning and rapturing all the redeemed people, as well as resurrecting his people that are dead. And then everyone evil that's living at that time, and the mark of the beast has already commenced, etc. The saints are being persecuted, that sort of thing. And then at his return, he kills all the wicked, and then resurrects or changes all the people that have ever been redeemed. So everyone that was ever in God, yeah.
Okay, one more from me, because then I do want to be fair and let other people talk as well. But one more. What about, because you said you were a partial preterist, right? So could you just affirm for me, what do you believe as a partial preterist?
I believe part of Matthew 24, you got to link it up with Luke 21, and so he was, the disciples asked him, so tell us, what's the sign of the end of the age and the promise of your coming? And they may or may not have understood that those were two separate events. It's not clear. But that ultimately, he's answering both questions. And so, like I was describing, things can be like a type and an antitype. The destruction of the temple, which happened after he died 40 years later, and there's some really good, amazing evidence of that in Jewish Talmud, Yama 39b, in fact, you should read it. But anyway, so he did say, like, when you see the abomination of desolation surrounding the holy place, I think that was the Roman army surrounding. He said, flee to the wilderness, pray and not come on the Sabbath day or in the winter. And that actually occurred. That did happen historically. We know that the Christians fled and were not killed by the Romans. But he's also, then when you link that up with Luke 21, you see that it's also related to the last things or whatever, the eschaton. So that's not preterist, partial preterist, but it has an ultimate fulfillment at the end. You can look at Daniel, I think it's Daniel 11 and 12 too.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll chime in a little bit, but I'll give some other people a little bit of time to ask your questions or whatnot. So I'll just wait in the back. Or because my phone's dying, so I can't stay on for